Breaking moments ago, John, we have learned actor James Van Der Beek
has passed away at the age of 48.
He is survived by his wife, Kimberly, and their 6 children.
I think a lot of us today woke up to some very, very sad news from Hollywood, and that was the death of actor James Van Der Beek at only 48 years old, which is so young.
Yeah, so he documented his battle with cancer. He had colorectal cancer. He announced that sort of back in 2024 in November. And his wife, Kimberly Van Der Beek, announced the news on Instagram saying, "Our beloved James David Van Der Beek passed peacefully this morning. He met his final days with courage, faith, and grace. There is so much to share regarding his wishes, love for humanity, and the sacredness of time. Those days will come. For now, we ask for peaceful privacy as we grieve our loving husband, father, son, brother, and friend."
Yes, very sad. And he and Kimberly shared 6 children together, which they had shared a lot of photos of their family over the years. So like a lot of people knew the kids' like names and faces and like how big of a part of his life his children were. And he often talked about being a father being his greatest role. And I think a really beautiful moment from the Dawson's Creek reunion that we had last year where all the cast, except James, who was too unwell to attend, got together to recreate the pilot of Dawson's Creek to raise money for his family and also for cancer research. And his 2 oldest daughters got up on stage at the end and sang the Dawson's Creek theme song, because obviously something they've grown up and were really proud of. His love story with Kimberly I always thought was really lovely, even though I was always kind of jealous. You know when someone dates your first crush? Because I don't know were you a Dawson's Creek fan?
I was a bit young for it.
Yeah.
So when it was really popular, it was all of the themes went over my head.
Yeah. Oh my God. Me too, a little bit to the extent, but I have such a visceral memory of Dawson's Creek as the first kind of TV show that I remember everyone at school being super obsessed with. So I was in primary school when Dawson's Creek came out, and then it finished in 2003. And I just remember even in primary school, everyone being like, "This." I don't know why we're all allowed to watch it, because in the first like scene, Katie Holmes and James Van Der Beek characters, Joey and Dawson, who for people who haven't seen it, which I do think is a lot of people,
yes,
because it's been off the air for so long now, but they were childhood best friends. They always slept in the same bed. It was like Dawson Leary, the main character, was this kind of like dreamer, artistic boy who like wanted to be a filmmaker and make movies. He's obsessed with Steven Spielberg. Joey Potter was like the tomboy girl who lived down the creek. Her mother passed away when she was little. She was being raised by her sister. Her dad was in jail, and when things got really bad at home, she would jump in her little boat and row down the creek to Dawson, and he kept a ladder outside the bedroom window.
That's where the trope comes from.
And she would climb up the ladder and sleep in his bed. And the first episode is them talking about how they can't sleep in the same bed anymore. And she's like, "We've got genitalia." He's like, "We've always had that." She's like, "Yeah, but now we're grown-ups." Me at 12, I was like, this is crazy. And I just remember everyone coming to school in like a fever dream and talking about this show. And it's just one of those shows, I think a lot of people are posting today about the show and James Van Der Beek, because it was it was like the show that saw them through their high school or like tween years. A lot of people like, he was my first crush. A lot of people like, I came to age with Dawson's Creek. And it was such a history-making show. It like featured like one of the first gay, I think it was the first gay teen character, like openly teen character on TV, and all these other things that they did that was quite groundbreaking. And because he was at the center of that, I think a lot of people today feel like they've lost a part of their childhood or a part of their teen years.
Yeah, and he was such an earnest character.
Yeah.
Now, even while I didn't watch the show, it was so in the ether, you know, like Dawson and Dawson's Creek, even like the memes that came off the back of it, Pacey, like I knew kind of the vibe of it.
Yeah.
And obviously the theme song. So it was a really big part of culture. And I think when he finished that, you know, a lot of people may remember him from that, but it was, for me, the love that I have for James Van Der Beek comes after his time on Dawson's Creek.
And exactly. He did so many projects after. But even when he was filming Dawson's Creek, like in the breaks, he did like Varsity Blues and all these iconic teen movies. And I feel like he always had a really good sense of humor about the Dawson's Creek thing, because as the kind of like, he was a central character, but the reason Dawson's Creek worked is that everyone on that show. And I guess that's why they all went on to be like, usually like when a lot of these teen shows finish, a lot of the cast, like maybe one cast member becomes a big star. But the fact like Katie Holmes has acted so solidly. Michelle Williams has been nominated for so many Oscars. Joshua Jackson has just like been working straight through. Busy Phillips went on to be a big star. Like they all, because I think the show really made each of them a lead in a way.
Yeah.
But for a while there, like everyone talks about how much they love Dawson now. But for a while there, in the heat of it, people didn't like him. They made fun of him.
Because he was a bit of a wet blanket?
Yeah, because he was a bit of a, but also that was just his character. And it kind of just in defense of Dawson Leary, which I have said many times over the years, it was just hard because like Jen Lindley was the bad girl and then Pacey Witter was the funny, misunderstood one who ended up having the big love story that was originally meant to be Dawson, but then the chemistry between Pacey and Joey was so good that they changed it. And then Joey Potter had her own like big story of like, you know, being this like bad girl, like raised in a bad home makes good. And Dawson was always kind of like the dreamer in the background, and a lot of people made fun of him for that. But I think now we appreciate a sensitive man.
I think you also like in that sort of time frame, there needs to be like an anchor character, right?
Yeah.
So he's the anchor. He's like the pillar and the moral compass for everyone.
Yeah.
And he's just like the everyday good guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, you know, people loved him so much, you know, afterwards, because it was like he was a really sweet guy.
And he never said anything bad about the show that I can recall. You know how like also when like teen stars finish on on their teen show and then they kind of like disparage it a little bit, or they mock the fans for like 20 years later still being like overly invested. And especially when like the fans that were predominantly young women who like are still obsessed with the show over 20 years later. And I liked that he never openly, at least, I don't know obviously what he said in his personal life, but he was really open about talking about like being supportive of the fans and people who still love the show.
Yeah, I was really interested in that because he kind of has a lot of the work that he did since Dawson's Creek was him playing himself.
Yeah.
He was parodying himself. And he did this interview with IndieWire in 2017 where he said, some of the best jobs I've had and some of the best directors I've gotten to work with happened after I just started taking the piss out of myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great way to look at it because he understands how important that show was. Like Dawson's Creek was so iconic, but he kind of goes in on the joke with it rather than making fun of fans. He's making fun of himself, but in a like gentle way.
Oh yeah, so many of his roles after that were, and this is what I know I've said this many times before on this pod, but I have to say it again. James Van Der Beek was a comedic genius.
Yes,
he was so good, and not just he was in on the joke. He was able to like a lot of his big guest star moments after Dawson's Creek were playing these crazy comedic side characters that only can be carried off by someone with brilliant comedic timing. So like when he did a guest star spot on One Tree Hill, which was kind of interesting because after Dawson's Creek, obviously we had this big boom of like teen shows coming in. So when he guest starred on One Tree Hill as like this crazy film director, it was almost like because Dawson had wanted to be a film director, and then he starred as this crazy film director, and it was such a big thing about him being on a teen show. And then even on How I Met Your Mother, when he plays Robin Scherbatsky's ex-boyfriend,
it's so
Simon.
Funny.
And he's like this teen dreamboat who was like in her music video and was in a band, and he was the cool guy. He was like the ideal person you have a crush on as a teenager. But the joke was like once he gets older, he's still like trapped in that teenage world. Yeah. He's still trying to date a girl at the pool. You know what I mean? Like he's still like treating her like shit, but she can't get out of it. And he's like, his comedic timing in that is so good. But his greatest role ever after Dawson Leary is playing himself, James Van Der Beek, in Don't Trust the Bitch in Apartment 23. Have you seen it?
Yes. Okay. So do
I'm
you know?
obsessed with that show.
So there's a little bit of history behind him getting that role, right? In 2011, he did this whole like web series with Funny or Die.
Yeah.
Which was huge back then. That was like where we got our sort of skit comedy. It was kind of like a partner to like the SNL-y thing, but that was like the internet funny place to go, right? Funny or Die. And he did this whole series with them called The Vanderweek.
Yeah, I have seen.
And they did all of these different skits. And basically he's playing himself. And there's the one that I really love, it's called like The Arsehole. You go hire an arsehole. And the whole thing is him basically saying, "Hi, I'm James Van Der Beek. I know that your girlfriends probably think that I'm an ideal man.
Yeah.
So you can hire me and I'll be a dick to them so that you look really good."
Yeah.
And it's just so clever. So the reason he got that role in Don't Trust the Bitch from Apartment 23 is because of this series that he did with Funny or Die.
And they could see that there was so much in that original character of this parody of himself. So in Don't Trust the Bitch in Apartment 23, some people don't like that title. I think it's a perfect title. Most people can go to hell. There's 2 seasons of it. It's on Disney Plus if anyone hasn't watched it. But yes, he plays a version of himself, James Van Der Beek, years after Dawson's Creek has finished. And he's best friends with Kristen Ritter's character, who is the bitch. And Dreamer Walker plays like this young woman, June, like really wide-eyed, idealistic, moves to New York to like make it in the big city. And these two kind of like make her life hell, but then they all become friends. But James Van Der Beek in that role is so good because his whole shtick is that he's still kind of living off his Dawson's Creek money. He's trying to become an actor, but no one wants to hire him. And he like seduces women, brings them back to his apartment because he's got this whole Dawson's Creek shtick where he pulls out the flannel shirt and he plays I Don't Want to Wait. And it's this whole amazing timing thing. But everything about him in that role is so funny. Like the episodes where they're trying to get him to be people's sexiest man. And when he's on Dancing with the Stars, which I believe James Van Der Beek actually did. And there's this whole thing in Don't Trust the Bitch where he practices the dance and then they don't actually show it in the show. So they had an outtake afterwards where they see James like doing the full dance because he was like, I learned that. I had to show the people. But he's so funny. And so many of his castmates from Dawson's Creek also did like little appearances on Don't Trust the Bitch. I think the best one was Busy Phillips, who came in later Dawson's Creek and played Audrey. She comes on the show because in the show, James Van Der Beek's character is trying to get in touch with all of his old Dawson's Creek castmates to do like get a reunion going. And he can't understand why no one will answer him. And he's like, but everyone loves me. And then Busy Phillips like meets him like undercover. And I was like, I can't be seen with you. Everyone hates you. Everyone hates you, James. And he's like, why? And he's like, and then this whole thing about like him not chipping on the cast gift. But it's so funny. And also I think such a testament to like how his co-stars have always spoken about him, which I think is very telling about especially like young male stars in Hollywood.
Well, I mean, look, the outpouring of love from all of these different people that have worked with him, known him, it was pretty overwhelming. And we see this often when, you know, celebrities pass, but it was just it was almost a very nostalgic outpouring of love because a lot of these people did work with him during the 90s and 2000s. Like it was, you know, Busy Phillips and Sarah Michelle Gellar and Kate Walsh, Jennifer Garner, like all of these people who he has worked with over the years and absolutely adored him. And, you know, even after he announced his cancer diagnosis, he talked about how it was like the best thing that happened to him because it made him live in the moment and live with his family. And, you know, like he was such a family man. Like the vibe he gave off, it was just like a good guy.
Yeah. And I think, again, like, especially from that moment in time, like in the 90s and early 2000s where things were so unregulated, you hear so many terrible stories from sets like this. And I think I've always thought it was interesting the way like Busy Phillips and Michelle Williams in particular speak of him, but in particular Busy Phillips because she is someone who's really outspoken about being treated badly by a lot of her co-stars and people she's worked with. And she's name-checked them all, both in her book, on her podcast. And she just like, I just always believe what she says because I just think that she doesn't tolerate. She's at a stage now where she's like, I don't tolerate shit. I'll speak the truth. I don't care. She's got her people in Hollywood that always hire her, like a Tina Fey, and so she is really good about calling out men in particular who have behaved really badly. And so when she says that, because a lot of the time, like people just have to speak well of their co-stars because you don't want it to blow up into a big news story and have that be like the center of it. But when she says that James was a really good guy and everyone rallied around him, and Michelle Williams was the one who was really driving. Even though like she's so private and she never really talks about Dawson's Creek, she was the one driving that big fan event to raise money, I think says a lot. I also think that people were very kind of like taken with his love story with Kimberly because he shared their story of how they met once, which I think was really cute. They met in Israel in 2009 and he had just been through a really big breakup and he was just like, you know, like really wanted to get married, which I guess is that whole thing of like, when men's like go on, it just goes on and they're just ready to get married. But he said that he'd been famous, wealthy, he'd been married and divorced already. He'd been less than wealthy. He'd been single. And he was on this trip, which was an organized like group trip. And all of a sudden he was like, I'm done. I don't want to be single anymore. I want a real relationship, a soulmate, and I want a family. He's like, I was mid-revelation rattling all this off to a friend of mine when a voice interrupted us, wanting to ask him a question. I was so annoyed. What the hell was this person who was stepping on my moment? I turned around and it was Kimberly. And then he said, 3 days later, I asked, I mean, this is the kind of thing only your soulmate can ask you. Otherwise, like, run for the hills.
Yeah.
This next bit is so intense. He's like, 3 days later, I asked her if she was looking for a relationship. Her answer was, I'm not. 6 months later, we were living together. 2 weeks after that, we were pregnant. And almost exactly 1 year to the day after she'd first interrupted me, we were married.
Yeah, look, again, normally that would be massive red flag. You'd be like, oh God, you guys are really rushing into this.
Intense
but
guy.
It's only not a red flag when it works out.
Exactly. It's not a red flag when it works out. Otherwise, creepy. Otherwise, like, you go and ask someone a question and the guy who you probably recognize as James Van Der Beek is really rude to you because you're interrupting. And 3 days later, he's like, so I want a soulmate to get married. Are you okay with that? You're like, absolutely not. And then, like, somehow things just happen and you're pregnant and you're married.
Yeah, and also the other thing is 6 kids is like a lot of children.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like that's you're now at the like this is a team, a sports team. It's almost in that like TLC category. You're going to have someone following you around because you've got so many children. Normally for me, that's kind of a weird. I'm always like, but he just seems like such a good dad, and he seems so sweet. And it's just so sad to see. It's beautiful to see how much family loved him, but the fact that his youngest is only 4.
Yeah, that's really devastating.
Breaks my heart so much because that's the age of my child, and I'm like, I can't. It really breaks my heart to think about them losing their father so young.
Yeah, there is a lot of sadness today. And I think sometimes people get like a bit eye-rolly when there's like a sort of like collective public grief over a celebrity dying, because obviously like their death is not more important than anyone else and we didn't know them. So a lot of the stuff we're sort of saying is just like, oh, like they sound like an amazing person, we don't know. But I think it's not a silly thing because you're also just mourning like the passing of time and just like a memory that you had of like watching a TV show, like TV shows in particular, because you have that every like I remember like once a week Dawson's Creek in the house and then talking about it for the whole week and then next week the next episode and like crying and laughing about it and stuff, and like those people just become part of the fabric of your life. And even if you didn't know them, it's okay to be upset that a little piece of the fragment of your life has now gone, and you can go back and watch the TV show, but it'll never be back in that time again. I think that's what people are mourning, and that's okay to be upset about. It's okay.
Towards the end of his life, after he was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, one of the things that he was really passionate about was awareness and raising money for bowel cancer. I've actually done some work with the Lachlan Keane Foundation. Lachlan was a friend of mine and he passed of bowel cancer, the same disease, a few years ago. And bowel cancer is one of the most deadly diseases in Australia, the second deadliest cancer in Australia. And the incidences of colorectal cancer have increased from 6.3 cases per 100,000 to 17.2 cases per 100,000 since 2000. And a lot of those are in younger people. Now, the thing is with this type of cancer is that it often has no symptoms. So the biggest thing that you can do is what a lot of these GI cancer charities are doing now is talking about awareness and getting checked because it doesn't have symptoms, often it's too late by the time you get checked, which is what happened to James Van Der Beek. So in Australia, a screening kit isn't available till after 45 from the government. You have to request it. However, you can ask your doctor for a colonoscopy or purchase an at-home kit online for about $50. I highly recommend it. So it's something that also will keep his legacy alive is the message that he had about this particular cancer. So I just wanted to make a note on that. We'll pop some things in the show notes, some links to different organisations if you want to find out a little bit more.